Go.
Rabbi Sai, welcome to Yerushalmi Shabbos. We are 13th Perek Halacha Gimel, which is page 88. Yeah. Hakorea b'chamata. So someone who tears a garment out of anger. He tears for a dead person a mourning's tear. And anything else which does a ruin and destruction. Peturin, they are potter. It's not constructive. Any malachas done on Shabbos, you are not chayav unless there's a tikkun. If it's a kilkul, you are potter. It sounds like the petur here is even tearing for a mace. Kolam mekalklin peturin. The Bavli learns that kriya out of anger is not a kilkul because it calms you down, and therefore it's a ma'aseh tikkun. But the petur is because the kriya is malacha she'nitzricha legufa. You don't have a tzorech for the result of the malacha. There's no purpose from the tear which is created in the garment. And that Mishnah's view of Rav Shimon, who says malacha she'nitzricha legufa is patur. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says you're chayav malacha she'nitzricha legufa, you would be chayav for tearing a garment out of anger. Okay? And that's what the Bavli brings down. Some learn that according to the Bavli, tearing out of anger is potter because all mekalklin are paturim, and even though it calms you down, that's not a ma'aseh tikkun. You're not allowed to do it. You'll get yourself used to. You should get yourself used to calming down your yetzer. You'll end up. Who knows? You'll end up doing avodah zarah and so on. So therefore, maybe it's a ma'aseh kilkul. It's not a tikkun. All right, let's carry on. So if you ruin something for the reason of correcting something, then shiurek and misakin, then the actual shiur of the chiyuv is for doing the malacha is the shiur which is needed through that to create a tikkun, why it was done for that purpose. Now tearing for a dead person is patur. Now we think it's a kilkul, and one would not fulfill his duty with that tearing if he has to do a tearing as an act of mourning, and he would have to tear again after Shabbos. If he fulfilled his duty with that, then there is a tikkun here. But with the Bnei Yeshiva said that's not the reason of our mission. Like you say over there in the Brisa, if you slaughter chatas, kippur, you have a kapara by bringing a chatas on a sin which you had to bring, or maybe acheres, but you now have to bring another one to be mechaper for the sin of breaking Shabbos. So you see, even though it is over Kol Shabbos, you fulfill your duty of the korban which you have to bring. So here as well we should say similar, that when you tear a garment on Shabbos, Yatsa Yidei Kirai, you should fulfill your duty to tear on a mace, and the fact that the Mishnah patters you from a chatas is not because of kilkul. You've got mitzvahs kriya. He says maybe it's a tikkun. Ella, you have to say the reason why it's patur is because this is like the view of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon says you're not chayav chatas for doing a malacha on Shabbos. You have to have a need for the purpose, right? In the malacha, tearing for a dead, there's no tzorech in the tear that's created in the garment. It's a side tzorech. There's no definite interest there. You fulfill your duty of the mitzvah of having to tear. Therefore, the Mishnah Paskas, the one who tears for the dead, he is patur from a chatas. Okay. Now, Abba said to them, don't start comparing the case of slaughtering on Shabbos to tearing for a dead person on Shabbos. Because Tamar, one who slaughters on Shabbos, who garam la'atzmai, he caused himself to bring the chatas. He did the sin, he has to bring a chatas to save himself. So although he did a shechita ba'avera, and maybe it's mitzvah ba'avera and it's not mitzvah, but maybe the korban will help to correct him. But here, at garam talai, the tearing is not coming for a tikkun achet. It's a mitzvah he has to do. Since the Torah forbade him to do this action, there's no mitzvah. Mitzvah ba'avera is not mitzvah. So it's not considered a tikkun, it's kilkul. And one who tears like this should be patur according to everyone, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef says, Vafilu Taman. Even then, in the case of the Brisa ad garam talai, the Torah is what caused him to bring the chatas, that the Torah commanded him to bring it. Without that, there would be no purpose in bringing a chatas. She'ilule shamata lo sheyavi. Had you not told him that he has to bring a korban, how would he have a kapara? The whole idea of the korban b'chapa is because Hashem commanded him. And if it's right that he's not kept a mitzvah by bringing a korban on Shabbos, because mitzvah b'avera, then it won't help to masakin himself. It's not going to be a kapara. Kapara is only coming by doing a mitzvah. And since the Brisa says the korban is helping, it must be a mitzvah b'avera is also called a mitzvah. So therefore, tearing for a mace on Shabbos, maybe he has fulfilled the mitzvah. So you have to say that the reason why the Mishnah patters the person who tears for a dead person on Shabbos is even though he fulfills his duty, it's because it's like the view of Rav Shimon, who says you are potter with melacha she'ein zricha legufa. Yeah, if it's not done for any purpose, that's why you are potter. Okay, the Korea, for example, it says on manas litvar, tearing in order to sew. That's Korea. Kriya not for sewing is a kilkul. But when there's another tikkun, like he's tearing a garment for a mace, then he's chayav Kriya, even though it's not a Kriya manas litzvah. Okay, let's carry on. Chavraya bain kume Rabbi Yosef. Chaver asked in front of Rabbi Yosef, Lo kein am Rabbi Yechon. Didn't Rabbi Yechon say Shum any Yitzalak? Matzah gezula eno yetz v'yidei chavasai. V'leil Pesach, you don't fulfill your duty with stolen matzah on Seder nights because the mitzvah b'avera. Therefore, one who tears for a mace on Shabbos shouldn't fulfill his duty in mitzvah b'avera. Amaline, he says Taman. In the case of Rabbi Yechon, the matzah is gufa avera. The matzah itself is an avera. It's stolen. So it can't be a mitzvah. But Amhacha here, who of Avera? He did an Avera by tearing on Shabbos. The garment is not an Avera item. He says, would we say, if you carried your matzah in the street, from the private to public domain on Shabbos, are you going to tell me, are you going to tell me you don't fulfill your duty with it? Mitzvah Avera, we're not going to say that. Of course you fulfill your duty. The matzah is not an Avera item. And the same thing with one who tears on his mace on Shabbos, the garment itself is not an item of Avera, so therefore he fulfills his duty. Tani, we learned in a price that Matzah Gezula Osel Barachala. One is not allowed to say Hamoitzi and Alachilas Matzah on stolen matzah. He's not allowed to say these brachas on it. Yeah? The Kesef Mishnah says, here's a riot to the Rambam, who says you should not make brachas on food which is osur. Yeah? Tray for food, one should not make a bracha on it. The Rambam says you can, but maybe here it means that you don't say the bracha alachilas matzah, because you're not fulfilling a mitzvah. It's mitzvah b'avera, you shouldn't make a bracha on it. But maybe berachas hanenin you can. The sugi is mashma not like that. The main svara l'chalek between berachas hanenin and berachas hamitzvahs. Berachas hamitzvahs, the bracha is on the mitzvah. Mitzvah b'avera is not mitzvah. But berachas hanenin, you can't get benefit without a bracha, and even though it might be a klala ta'eva, maybe you can't eat without making a bracha. Okay. Rav Oshia, Hashem, Hashem. Like a bracha can be niyetz, it can be like one who steals, is like a blasphemer. That which we're saying, you can't make a bracha on stolen matzah is betchila, before you eat the matzah. But benching after you eat it, mutter, you're allowed to, you have to bench. Because after you eat, once you've eaten it, you owe money to the guy. You've acquired it. You owe money. And therefore, you've eaten the matzah, and now you don't have to give the matzah back. You've eaten it. You only owe money, and therefore you can bench on that. Now, it sounds like you shouldn't make a bracha on the stolen matzah, but you fulfill your duty with eating the matzah. Earlier on, Rav Yochanan said, you don't even fulfill your duty with it. Rav Yochanan, he said, in avera mitzvah. It's a svara. You can't say an avera should be a mitzvah. Mitzvah and avera are two opposites. Avera is to eat stolen matzah. There's no way you can fulfill your duty with that. So you don't fulfill your duty with it. Rabbi Yosef, he said, "Ein mitzvah avera." Just like it's impossible that a mitzvah should be an avera because they're two opposites. And since an avera is to eat stolen matzah, then you can't fulfill your mitzvah duty with eating it. Rabbi he says, Eile ha-mitzvahs, we dash and Eile is to exclude. If you do them properly, a mitzvahs, they are mitzvahs. If you don't do it properly, ain't a mitzvahs, then they're not mitzvahs. Halacha dalet. Now, we spoke about the threads to be chayav melechas oireg. And we're talking about the thread to be mechayev, again, the length of the thread to be mechayev in this malacha. We're going to bring the share of the thread that you have for other various malachas, which to do with threads and dyeing of threads, washing and spinning and dyeing. Share hamalabe, the share of washing wool in water, manapes, which is like hitting the strands of the wool with the stick to separate them. Hatzavea, and for dyeing the threads. Vahatova, and spinning the threads. Shiurei kemonai roichav hasit. It's like the distance between the thumb and the middle finger and the finger next to the thumb. That's the difference. When you distance them one from the other as much as you can. Kofel, and that distance doubled. One who weaves two threads, shiurei kumlai hasit. The shear is that distance between the middle finger and the forefinger. One way that if you had if you put two threads of orev within a chassis, that shear, you're chayav b'mlachas oreg, even though you didn't do it the whole width of the oreg. Taman tanina. Now we've got a contradiction that the shear for tzaveh is that distance between the fingers doubled. Taman tanina. Elsewhere we have learned one who carries wood from one domain to another. The shear is getting a vashal beitz hakala to cook a small egg, and that's a chicken's egg. And it says one who carries shells of nuts and things, or pomegranate shells, or various other plants which is used for dyes. The shear is to make a color, to produce a color for a small piece of material which is put on a hat of a woman. Here you're saying that dyeing your chayv, even a small, tiny bit, which is much, much smaller, there we seem to have a bigger amount for dyeing. So the Gemara answers Taman, there we're talking about Ramoitzi, the shid michiv of carrying the actual dyes to produce the dye, the actual species to produce the dye. Well, it's baya, and to produce the dyes, you need a bigger share. You're not going to carry things and cook them, prepare them, unless there's a certain amount of dye that you produce. Right? But if you have the actual dye, but here we're talking about the chiyuv of dyeing them on those spices. So here, even the small amount between the fingers, that's enough. You're not going to bother dyeing. You're not going to bother dyeing something, even that sort of amount. So here, at sevea, sits kofel. Yeah, you need a certain size, whatever it is. Okay. A person would bother to make a dye. That sort of amount is enough to make a dye. Rabbi Yehuda, halacha hey. Rabbi Yehuda ima hasad tzipah. Now we are on to the malacha of tzeda. One who is running after a bird until it goes lemigdal, into a cupboard, or is running after a tzvi, a deer, labais, till it goes into a house and then locks the door. Chayav is chayav for malacha of tzeda, of trapping. They're considered trapped. But if you hunt a bird into a house or a deer into a garden or courtyard, you're not chayav, because the bird can fly through the windows or other doors, and a deer can fly by climbing on the fences of the courtyard. With a bird, then you are not chayav on taking it into the migdal, into a cupboard, whatever it is, and not by bringing it into a house, like the words of Yehuda. Utzvi, not a bird anyway, utzvi, but as far as the deer, you're chayav legina, you get into a garden, and a chosel bivin, into a pool, into a courtyard, then, and the deer can run away above the fence. It's not uncommon to do this, so it's considered trapped. No, they're all not all the same. This is the rule. One who traps a deer to an area where it's not, it basically caught it. In order to catch it, you have to do, if you're basically taking the deer into an area where you can't just catch it easily, you have to work hard at trapping it, you have to do an additional act of trapping, then you're potter. But if you hunt a deer into an area where it's just there lying for you, there's nothing missing in its process, you can just catch it and cup it straight away, then you are liable. Now, the following sugya comes from Beitza, and the Mishnah says you're allowed to hunt on Yom Tov a chaya from the areas, the bivrim, from the pools. It's considered ready and domesticated and ready for hunting. So there's no Issa Seder. And this Mishnah in Beitza doesn't fit in with the view of Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah. Amrav Chidna, Masnisa, the Mishnah in Beitza, which says that a chaya in a bivar is considered, what do they translate a bivar? Huh? What do they call it there? A chaya in a sort of domestic area.
In a closet or something.
What? A closet?
Yeah.
Okay, it's considered hunted already. That is the like of Yehuda, not like Yehuda. Tanina, we've learned in that Mishnah. Yehuda said, a bird in a tower, with tzvi labayis, a deer in a house, chayav. You're chayav for trapping. And so you're only chayav, you get the deer into the house. Whereas into a garden which is bigger than a house, you would be potter. It wouldn't be considered hunted unless it's in a house. Now, if you're going to tell me the Mishnah basis according to everyone, even according to Yehuda, then we have a contradiction of Yehuda. The Tanina Tamar, we learned of the Ein Sadin Dog even Abivrin, you can't start catching fish from the ponds and don't start giving them food to eat, but you can trap animals, chay and oif, from the bivrin, and the Mishnah allows you to trap these chayas from these ponds. It sounds like a chaya is considered already trapped. But we said according to Yehuda, catching a deer, legina ala bivrin, into a big garden, you're patur, because the chaya is not considered. Why are you patur? Trapping a deer in this garden, you're patur, because it's not considered captured. It's not mutter, it's patur. It must be that the Mishnah in base is not like the view of Rabbi Yehuda, it must be the view of the Chachamim. Just this again. We said according to Rabbi Yehuda, you take a tzvi into a gina, you are patur. Whereas, let's just see here.
I think it's actually some kind of...
the main question of the Gemara is from the Sefer of the Mishnah in Beitza. It says you can get a chaya from the pools, the bivrin, these enclosed areas, and it says you cannot bring the fish from the bivrin. Don't tell me the reason why you're allowed to get a chaya because it's malacha seder is mutar on Yom Tov, like oichel nefesh. So the Gemara brings the first part of the Mishnah that we don't allow seder on Yom Tov. So you have to say the reason of the heter to get a wild animal, a chaya, from the bivrin is because the chaya is considered trapped there, and that's not like Rabbi Yehuda, who says a chaya is not considered trapped in a bivar. So is a chaya trapped in this enclosure, or is it not considered trapped in this enclosure? And we seem to have a contradiction. Yeah. Some say the wording here, Mechavish Tasa de Yehuda, is a bit extra. Okay, so let's see what we got. Alagin alagivrin for Turin. Okay. Mechavish Tasa de Rabbanon. We also have a contradiction in the Chachamim. The Taninan, we've learned in our Mishnah, you take and find a bird and you trap it in a tower, or deer, or tzvilagin, deer in a courtyard, or bivrin, you are chayev. According to Chachamim, a deer into a garden is considered trapped. Or Taninan Taman, in Beitza we've learned, you can, on Yom Tov, hunt the animals and the birds on the bivrin, but no sin if and give them food to eat. And it says min bivrin, it doesn't mention a garden. Sounds like you cannot trap a chaya in a garden. It's not considered trapped there. So the hunting of a chaya into a garden or courtyard is not considered seder. And that's why it's not considered seder. So is it considered seder or is not considered seder? So the answer is So the Mishnah is talking about a courtyard with a roof. So a chaya which is there is considered trapped. The Mishnah Beitza didn't mention mechatzer because there are courtyards which are not got a roof on. A chaya is not considered trapped there because it can jump over the fences. So it depends, is it a courtyard with a roof or not? But Tanina, we've learned Gina, that you're trapping a chaya into a garden, you're chayev. Islach mema Gina mukara. Do you want to tell me the garden's got a roof? You don't put a roof on the garden. It needs rain. And even so, the chaya is considered trapped, even though it can jump around. But it's unusual. So you still have the contradiction between the Mishnayos with a garden. So your answer is it can be dada, can be tanuk. It depends if it's big or if it's small. So the Mishnah is talking about a gina, a chotzer, which is small. The chaya is considered trapped there already. Whereas Mishnah Beitza, there are types of gardens which are big, where a chaya is not considered trapped. And we also said, Rav Shimon Gamliel said, not all the bivrin are the same. If it's Mechusas Seder, it's also. If it's not Mechusas Seder, it's Mutter. So let's see if this is correct here. So Rav Ula Amar, Boin Kumir Avacha, Manisni, how should we learn this? Is the Girsa, like we said, anything Mechusas Seder is also, She'ena Mechusas Seder is Mutter. So is that the wording? If it needs trapping, it's forbidden. If it doesn't need trapping, it's permitted. Is that the right wording? Or maybe, Kol Mechusas Seder Chayv, if it needs trapping, it's liable. She'ena Mechusas Seder, if it doesn't need trapping, you're potter. And that makes more sense. Sounds like the issur to hunt from a bivar which is lacking hunting is min Torah. You get lashes for it. So we should really have the lashon here. Kol b'chusat seder chayev. Maybe that's the better wording to have. Alone, Rav Acha answered. He said to them, "Lo bin al l'tochanan kiyamin." Are we talking about a case where the animal is in the bivar is locked, and since it's locked and he can't get out, then definitely there's no issur Torah here. It's not trapping when you capture. It's already trapped, right? It's only asking rabbanon. So therefore, don't have a girsa chayev ela kol mechusat seder. Anything which is lacking hunting, also she'ena mechusat seder. If it's not lacking hunting, mutter it is permitted. Now we bring up Shem Gamliel. What's considered mechusat seder? Amar Shmuel Achud Rebbe Berechia kol shu mechusat nishbim. Anything which, in order to hunt a chaya, you need to bring traps and things that you need to find ways to try and hunt it down. Mechusat seder. That is considered lacking in hunting. If, however, you can catch it easily without any nets and things, that's not considered lacking in hunting. Okay. Now this is a brisa about slaughtering animals on Yom Tov. You're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov the animals which are found within these bivrim, these enclosures. They're considered already prepared from before Yom Tov. However, you cannot shecht the ones that are in the nets and the various traps, because there's something we don't know whether they trapped before Yom Tov, maybe they're only captured on Yom Tov, and they're awesome. Rav Yaisi Rebun B'Shem Ravimi Metzadata Deshitai, and we're talking about a trap of shesi. Basically, it's a trap made of weft threads, right? Like a machmeres, which is like another type of netting. Shmuel Ami said, "Tzadhu b'fitim." You're allowed to catch fish on Yom Tov from a big barrel. Rav Ami said, "Secho denara shari." If you block up the river on Erev Yom Tov on the two sides, so the fish shouldn't leave it on Yom Tov. They won't go outside. You're allowed to capture them on Yom Tov, the fish, because they're considered trapped already. Since you've blocked off the river, they wouldn't have come on Yom Tov itself. Therefore, it's no problem on Muksa. Rav Yehudan said, this din was said just when you block the river by Hida Tassim, with something that's similar to, I don't know, metal plates or some kind. Yeah. Okay. Halachas Vav. Tzvi shenechnas lebais. The deer goes in the house. Oh dear. And a person locks the door. Chayev. He is liable. If two people lock the door, Paturin, they are potul. If one couldn't lock it, then the two did it together, they are chayavin. Rav Shimon says, no, you're potul, even though you couldn't do it yourself. He dashes that even in this case, the Torah pattered when you're doing a malacha through two people. Now we bring a brisa. It says in the Torah, it says if a person sins doing one of the mitzvahs which shouldn't have been done, it says ba'asaisa. We learn on doing an avera, the whole thing the Torah obligates you, not if you do part of it. Hayachid sha'asa, if one person does a ma'aseh avera, he's chayiv. Shnayim or shlosh sha'asa, 2 or 3 that do it, you'll put pturin, then they are potul. Yeah. Rav Chuna. Now this is talking about like two people doing a malacha, but with the same koyach. What about if one does it with much more strength and the second one just supports a bit? Rav Chuna Amar, like me helping you take the sukkah down, right? You do the main thing and I just help it. Rav Chuna Amar, if one of them was healthy and strong, but one was weak, or the sick person, he closed it with all his might. He could do the door on his own. But the healthy person, the strong person, didn't use all his energy. He just supported a bit. The sick person who closed it is chayev. Abari is patur, and the healthy person is patur. Whereas the chayev did it b'kayach, and he had enough to finish the malacha himself, and the healthy person didn't really support him, just did a tiny bit. He's only misayah. Rav Yosef Ribun Shem Rav Chuna. The deer is running, and he goes in the house. When you want to close the door for yourself to guard your house. Maybe you didn't know the deer was in the house. But now, you ended up locking the door for yourself, and the deer was in the house as well. Murta, you're allowed to keep the door locked. You're not allowed to open it to let the deer go. You see a child drowning in the river, you intend to bring him out of the river. To bring some fish with him. Murta, you're allowed to do this. The Chachamim allowed you, so you shouldn't refrain from saving lives. You're investigating, you're uncovering a mound of stones to save someone. So you intend to bring the person out, and also take out some gold which was there under the stones. Mutter, that's permitted, so we do not want you to stop from saving lives. Okay. Now, a deer has entered the house. The door is open. Someone stands at the door, but he didn't close up the whole doorway. There was an area the deer could still run out. But Yashav Hasheni, the second person, stands next to the first person. And now he has closed off that remaining entry that was there. Now the deer cannot run out. Hasheni, the second one, is liable. Through by him sitting in place, that deer is considered trapped. The first one is potter. When he sat down, the deer could still get out. And even though that now the first one is supporting the side there, basically even if he got up, the deer could run away. There's no chiyuv because of lechasad, only on a ma'asav seder, not that it stays in its original place. Yashav Rishon ala Pesach milahu. The first person stayed on his place, and now the deer can't get out. And afterwards, the second one sat in front of him or behind him, within that gap, that hallway. So now he also is blocking up the doorway. The first one went away, and the second one is remaining there, blocking the doorway. The first one is live because of Seder. When he sat down, the deer was hunted. The Hasheni Potter, the second one is Potter, because the deer was already hunted and ready through the first one, right? And even though the first one then walked away, the deer is still considered guarded. There's no issue. Lama Zedam, is a capella. No, let's base on the Shamrai to lock the door, Shamrai to guard it. You didn't know there's a deer there, and afterwards it turns out in the Street Shabbos Daf there was a deer there all the time. Oh dear. So even though you found out, you're not chayav to set free the deer, because at the time when you hunted the deer, you captured the deer, you went over an issur, you didn't know it. And the same thing here. At the time when the deer was captured, no, the second person didn't do any issur. So even though afterwards the first one has got up, the second one's not chayav to stand up and let the deer go free. He's allowed to stay there till the end of the day. Can you give these animals that are trapped on Shabbos, can you give them food? You mustn't give water before the bees. The doves and the dovecot. We don't do anything for something which is muksa. And the same thing here. The deer was not really ready for you to use before Shabbos. It's muksa, and you can't give it food on Shabbos. But Shammai boy, he said a bird that was trapped in a cupboard. Can you put a keli on top of it to stop it flying away? Yeva will be kaihi like that. Yanai. I didn't hear from my father. My sister told me in his name. An egg which is laid on yamtiv, which is muksa. You put kli next to it so it shouldn't roll and break. You can't put a keli on top of it to stop it breaking, because you can't move a keli for the sake of muksa. Shmuel, he said, keli. You can put a keli on top. He says you're allowed to move a keli for double muksa. And so for the question if you can put a keli on a bird, it depends on this machlokes. Rav Shammai, boy, he asked, Mahu lekoshrei bechevel. What about tying with a string so that you shouldn't leave the house? You're allowed to use the size of an animal, or the size of an animal. It's not the main animal you're using. He started behema. He started on the size of the animal, the same as the size of the tree. The same din that they are both mutter. Kol shemutter. And I remember actually, kol shemutter. Ishtamish atzidei behema. If you can use the size of the animal, mutter lekashrei. You're allowed also to tie things there. And if you can't use the size of the animal, you can't tie it. Rosh Shimon says you're allowed to lean on the sides of the animal, so heels tying is also permitted. So Kol Shemutter L'Sham Shasidim Behema Mutter L'Kashrei, Kosher also L'Sham Shasidim Behema also L'Kashrei. Adon Alach Perikal Ereg. The Babli holds you mustn't use the sides of the animal. Remember, the Babli only allows Sidei Stadim, sides of the sides. But the Yerushalmi allows you to use the sides of the animal. Okay. Hadron Alach, Perikal Areg. Hadron Alach, Perikal Areg. Hadron Chalan, Perikal Areg. I think we'll stop here, Rabbi Say, yeah?
Okay.